Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Really excited today because we have Andrew Wang on the channel, a writer in the space, writing all about NFTs and some popular publications. I'll let him talk about that stuff, but we're going to talk about NFTs. We're going to talk about how to find cool NFT projects. We'll talk about the future of NFTs, just basically having a conversation all about non-fungible tokens. So, Andrew, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, this is so awesome. And look, before we start, I tweeted that I was coming on your show, Hashoshi, and people said, "Wear the cool cat shirt, wear the ghost shirt." So I just had to say that I'm for everybody, I'm for every community here. So have the cool cat shirt, just wanted to rep it real quick, and then I'll switch it to my ghost shirt. So now
There you
everybody's happy.
go.
Keep going with this.
Yeah, I was actually tempted to comment, yeah, wear both, and then it would have given away that this is the show you're going to be on. So I figured I'd keep it a secret. So awesome, man. If you could really quickly, give folks a little bit of your background. You mentioned to me right before we started, you just dropped out of school to go full time on NFTs to keep writing and do what you're passionate about. I would love for you to give folks a little bit of that background.
Yeah, absolutely. So last week I dropped out of journalism school. And I was in journalism school because it was in New York City, and I was
Mhm.
so happy to be back with us moving a little bit like further into the pandemic where you can kind of have more in-person stuff, things like that. I'm like, wow, I love to write. Been trying really hard to be a journalist. I freelance for a lot of places. And with that comes a ton of rejection, comes a
Mhm.
ton of, I'm not really sure what to do. I could get a lot of mentorship. And so I enrolled and I thought this is what I needed to do. All of a sudden, when I know that I'm going, the NFT space falls into my lap, basically. What happened was I took a charge and pick up basketball, which you should never do. I even talked with Andre Iguodala the other day, and he said, never take a charge. Always go for the swipe steal. And I think that just highlights how amazing this space is, right? I just had a mentor in Andre Iguodala and a three-time champion, one-time finals MVP, one of the greatest defenders to ever play. And he's over here just talking with me. And that's how this
Yeah.
space is. And I'm learning so much about community. I'm hearing stories every single day because you have new innovations, new projects, really cool people coming into this space trying to figure this thing out together.
Hmm.
And I'm over here like, wait, there's so much to learn here. I used to be really against those people who are always like, learn by doing. But I'm like,
Hmm.
you could also learn by learning and learn by reading. But here was this one moment in my life where I had to look myself in the mirror and be like, Andrew, this is something special. Like, there are things going on here that I've never seen before, things that maybe other journalists are still learning how to cover, topics that some people maybe don't take so seriously, in broader society. So I'm like, let me just jump in here and see what happens. Sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith.
Love that. I mean, and especially right now in the space that we're in, particularly around NFTs. There's so much excitement. And while I think that there are, of course, instances where you could say, okay, things are a little inflated here, things are inflated here, there's a lot of excitement. Will that always exist? And the truth is that like everything else, it'll be cyclical. But I think we're at the very, very ground floor in terms of realizing the potential of what NFTs are long term and what they mean for digital content, what they mean for creators and all sorts of things, and the way that we interact with each other on games even. So I think it's really exciting, and I wanted to get your opinion as someone who's writing about this, who's really focused on this space. Because I have to sort of spread the love. I'm looking at DeFi and NFTs and layer ones, layer twos, and all these different things. I don't get to focus on one place. But for you, who's really into NFTs, how do you go about searching for projects that are exciting and finding some of these really cool ideas before they pick up in the mainstream?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, maybe starting with a conceptual point, I was talking to one of my friends the other day. He's a really big artist, worked with some great brands, but hasn't yet jumped into the NFT space.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, what if you did an NFT? And he looked and he was like, this is so cool. There's so much art going on. But then he said something that stuck with me. He said, it's like a factory mass producing things. And all of a sudden, it made me think because I've been in this space a while. And on one hand, we have the idea of like meaningful mass production, which is, say, like generative projects, where even though it's mass produced, there's care that goes into it, typically speaking. But then there's this kind of push towards one projects, projects that seem to value aesthetics over pure rarity,
Mm-hmm.
quality, not quantity, for example. And I thought about what he said about a factory mass producing. And I said, hey, what about kind of the other way around? What if it was about, you know, not mass producing, but producing the masses? And the way I think about that is like, I kind of consider myself the masses, been lucky enough to get a lot through my parents. A lot of people have helped me in my life. But at the same time, I don't have like a huge pedigree.
Hmm.
Uh, I feel very lost when I go to fine art galleries. I feel rather insecure actually. And in some ways, I feel like the NFT space is producing me in the sense that it's giving me something to love, giving me something to collect that holds value. It's
Hmm.
saying, hey, put your heart and passion into the space, whether as a writer, artist, translator, builder, broker, developer, and you're gonna reap the fruits of your labor. And that's what I mean by producing the masses. Like
Hmm.
so many of us have been so far removed from the art space
Yep.
or even the tech space. I'll say that too. Look, I studied sociology in college. I was always like, "Ooh, tech, like that sounds scary," or like, "What's
Yeah.
going on in Silicon Valley?" Like those guys are weird, or like whatever. But coming to the space, it's such an intersection of points. Art, technology, finance, sociology, philosophy, speculation. But
Yeah.
maybe that's philosophy. Who knows? Um, but thinking about this space as something that really like can change a person, can
Hmm.
change a person's tastes, can change the way somebody relates to things.
Yeah.
That's what I always ask myself when I'm looking at new projects. That makes me not worry about supply because you could have a billion NFTs, but what are the NFTs and what are the projects that really make you feel like you're changing as a person or helping you develop your relationship to this project or the artists or
Hmm.
everybody in it? I think that's always what I'm asking myself.
Got it. So it's like almost it's almost like there's a new trilemma. It's like you have the trilemma in like baseline protocols, like in your layer one blockchain protocols. You're trying to balance security, decentralization, and effectively scale. Here, it's almost like you're trying to balance rarity, accessibility, and like community engagement in a way, or like the experience part of it. You have to have all those things. Like it needs to be a quality piece of art in a sense. It needs to have some way for people to get engaged and feel part of the community, and it also has to have sort of a fundamental level of rarity that there's that you can that can it can accrue value at a certain demand level. It's really interesting.
Right. I think when I think about all of these different factors, if I could choose one that just truly stands out, it would probably be, not just the aesthetics or not just the rarity, but honestly, the sense of community that you get when you're a part of
Hmm.
this. That's what seems so different about this space than anything I've witnessed in maybe the contemporary fine art world, etc. Because people are so passionate here.
Yeah.
Everybody's very engaged. And I almost feel bad because I'm lucky that I'm starting to get an audience for NFTs now. And I'm like, I can't keep up with DMs because everybody's pouring their heart out, asking
Hmm.
me questions, sometimes shilling, but sometimes shilling also comes from a place of love and passion for something.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I try to look at this from a kind of sociological perspective, since that's sort of my background. It's not, it's less what I know, it's more like one of the few things that I'm not that bad at. Um, you know, I think what makes the NFT space so special and what I'm always asking when I'm looking at a project is what does the community look like on Twitter, on
Hmm.
Discord? How do its users talk? How do they engage with other people? I'll give an example. Okay, so 1995, there was a big Chicago heat wave, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, a lot of people passed away, and most of them were elderly folks. There's a sociologist named Eric Kleinenberg who kind of goes in and tries to find out why. And he finds these two neighboring communities that are very similar in terms of demographics, income, things like that. And what he found was that one community, like people passed away like multiples of times higher than the other one. And he basically asked why. And he found out that one community was a community. It wasn't just a group of houses of people living next to each other. There
Hmm.
was one community where, the sidewalks were uneven, the stores were shuttered, and then in the other community, the coffee shops are open. The library is open, stores are open, people are having barbecues. So when it gets hot in your house, you're not just staying there because you don't have anybody. You have a friend who can check in on you. And
Mhm.
that's honestly how I approach the NFT space. If I can find a community where people are checking in on me, where it's a place for me to go to find solace, to share ideas,
Mhm.
um, I feel secure. And my livelihood, maybe in the NFT space, is the value of my asset or even my emotional attachment to the NFTs that I collect.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, right? It's what makes a lot of these projects so successful is the human element of it. It's that, like what I think, like Bored Apes, for example, it's the community that's caused all of the accrual of value, and it's the fact that people there's like this solidarity. People say, "Oh, I just, I bought an ape. Now my follower count on Twitter is doubled." They're getting all these messages, and it's like that is something that every person wants. You know what I mean? For the most part, is that community. And so how do you go about finding that? Is it all something that you find? You go into the Discord for a project that you find online, or how do you do that?
Mhm. To be honest, there are so many ways that people do it.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that some users are in like Discord groups where there's alpha, where they find out
Yeah.
about what the next big project is. I'm not really in any of those. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
active on Twitter. And I use Twitter as a chat room. That was actually the best advice I've ever been given about how to use Twitter. And I got it from Taylor Lorenz, who, is looking to cover more crypto and NFTs. She covers creators. Um, one of the greatest journalists alive, in my opinion. Actually
Amazing.
helped me with my decision to drop out. But basically, she told me use Twitter as a chat room, right? Like, don't worry too much about what people will say to you if you just ask questions like, hey, what do you guys think about this project? Or what does it mean to FOMO in? Or what does NGMI mean?
Yeah.
Ask these questions. But that's like a very basic thing if you're just getting into NFTs. A lot of us, once you've been in it for a while, you're looking like, okay, like where's the next big project? And for me, I would say like jump into all the discords
Mm-hmm.
because that tells you so much about a project. I'll say this. As a journalist, I try very hard not to shield projects.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, I never take a paid promo. So who knows how much ETH I've left on the table from that. It's very hard not to like get into specifics because you have so many projects. It's not like just Bitcoin or just Ethereum. So it does end up sometimes being about that. But anyways, I think Ghost is a really good example of that. So they have a Discord called the Pain Gang. And when I wrote my last article, it was about ghosts and about Pain Gang. I went into the Discord to talk with them and basically get quotes, get to know them, find out
Mm-hmm.
what was going on. And it was 4:30 a.m. in the morning because I procrastinated and I was like, nobody's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, hey, it's international. Maybe they'll be there. And I asked them where they're from. They're like, yeah, I'm from New York. It's 4:30 a.m., but I'm here. And they're all just discussing ghosts. And I'm like, is there a drop coming? Because he lives, in Asia and the time zone's different. They're like, nope, we're
Just
just
hanging
up
out.
talking about ghosts because we love him and he's changed our lives. So when I see that, I'm like, that's community. When
Mm-hmm.
people are passionate, when they're putting in time, really, you just have to get a feel for it, I think. Um, and it's something that takes time. I don't want to say that I've made mistakes just because I saw a good community and I minted it and the value went down. I think it's a heuristic, but it's a pretty powerful one, considering things like stocks, which can be very hard to predict. Where if it goes
Yeah.
up, you're like, I'm a genius, and then if it goes down, you kind of get quiet about it. I do think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of participation in there.
And you look at the the fact that I think a lot of people are very motivated by these examples of someone who minted an NFT and then within 2 months they're selling that NFT for 50 ETH or 100 ETH, and I think it's hard not to, as a human being, look at that and be like, I need to find the next big thing. But I think it's when you're doing that and you're looking for something that's like just going to accrue in value is when you get trapped in these sort of um, you get trapped in this myopic way of looking at it, where you might miss a really vibrant community that maybe doesn't have much yet, but will eventually get there and eventually be a project that you give some, loving care to over time. and it does pay dividends, whether it's financial or just like you mentioned, Andrew, the community part of it. Like for example, the Pudgy Penguins thing. There were definitely some significant sales there. Don't get me wrong, but I think that's proof in and of itself that a lot of the value prop for a lot of people there was like they were a part of something, and it very quickly took off, and everyone wanted to be a part of it, and it was accessible at that time for most everyone to get into it and to be a part of it. The community part is huge, and if we look at the future of NFTs, I want to get your opinion on this. What are some of the areas you think that we haven't seen much growth in around NFTs and adoption therein that we will see as this continues to evolve?
Absolutely. So, in terms of community, right? You said maybe we're all out there looking for the next unicorn, this next project that's gonna 100x.
Mm-hmm.
Look, like I can't really be the one to be like I have all this alpha because I got lucky with Cool Cats.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the art, and Cool Cats was like my first next step out of Top Shot, and it just happened to be launching that day. So in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, I really did get lucky, and then I felt attached to my digital identity, making my upside down cat my profile picture. So then I'm like, I never want to change it.
Mm-hmm.
People are telling me that I'm smart, I'm diamond hands. Like I'm not really diamond hands. I just wanted to be a part of this community, and I was learning so much that
Mm-hmm.
in that process, as the value went up, I kind of just rode along with it. One thing I will say is maybe instead of asking how to find the next big project, it's also worth asking, what can I do in the project that I'm in?
Mm-hmm.
What am I capable of doing? What somebody told me once was that the NFT space is a community economy. And he didn't really get into the specifics of it. But I remember sitting down, I'm like, community economy, like, what could this mean?
Yeah.
And I came to a conclusion that was basically like, traditionally when we think about consuming things or buying objects, it's like created and then it's sort of distributed top down. Like I make the art, I sell it to you, and you have it, and then it has a certain value. And maybe depending on who I am or what I do, the value may go up and may go down, things like that. What's so cool about the NFT space is that value can go upwards. It can flow this way as well, in the sense that you could land any project in my lap and we could dig in and find good stories. We could find great people to join.
Mm-hmm.
We could contribute ideas. So many projects don't have everything figured out, but they figure things out because of the community. And by doing that, I bring value to what I'm in. And it's a really fine distinction between just shilling your project hard. I think it's really sitting down and saying, if it really is about community, well, I'm community. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
to always find that community. I can build it. And I think a great example of this is a lot of more up and coming one-of-one artists. For example, there are a ton out of Thailand right now that have
Mm-hmm.
fantastic art, and they're selling them at prices of like $10, $20, $50. Um, and luckily, it can be tenable because of the royalty structure in NFTs. But basically, sometimes artists from outside the US, the UK, or Australia, where English is really popular, and we know the NFT space is pretty English centric, you know, they might have trouble building up this community.
Mm-hmm.
But they have all the ideas, they have all the art, all the passion. So that's one thing you could do, like join that community, contribute to it, help fill in the gaps, because all you need to do is plug a few holes, and then your ship is going to immediately float and it's going to go wherever you need it to go. In terms of the future, you asked me of how this is going to play out. The reason I said community economy is in terms of the value flowing upwards, like from the people through the project. I'm really seeing that with something like Loot NFT.
Mm-hmm.
My friends are all making fun of me because I think I was like on a run or something and they messaged me about Loot and I was like, no. And now, last I checked, the floor was super, super high, like over 10 ETH, well over 10 ETH.
Yeah.
And from what I know, one thing that they're doing is they're really putting the ability to create and curate in the hands of the individual, right? It's text based, but then you can create whatever you want from that and
Mm-hmm.
create a ton of value. I listened to this guy make a song about like wielding a katana and like whatever. Like how amazing is that? And I think Loot is really just scratching the surface, but it is doing something very, very different. And so when I say community economy, I'm starting to see like another next level manifestation of that in projects like Loot. So that's where my mind is going. 1 second, I'm like, I understand NFTs. I get the blockchain. I get community. And then something else comes out and you're like, okay, like, I guess I don't understand NFTs.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, Loot is a really interesting project because it opens up this idea of, you hear the term composability a lot in DeFi, but to date, you haven't heard it much about NFTs. But I think if you look at Loot, it's taking the same idea. It's like, here's an on chain text based, basically, list of attributes, really, what that's what it is. All these other projects now can do whatever they want and create all these experiences and communities around that as a base layer, as one building block in a bigger project. That to me is a big part of what the future holds, and new ways for NFTs to interact with each other and for people to interact with NFTs and conversely with each other through NFTs. And, thinking about from your perspective, Andrew, writing about this stuff, I mean, what a great opportunity, because there's so many things that when you learn, you get to share with other people in a written format and in a written medium. And by the way, folks, if you're watching and you haven't followed Andrew on Twitter yet, please do so. That's one of the best follows that I've made in the last couple of weeks. So I'll leave that linked down below, of course.
Yeah, I'm a annoying high volume tweeter, but I'll try my best to put some good stuff out there every once in a
Yeah.
while. I use a lot of caps. I use a lot of crying emojis. And I use a lot of like this emoji.
Yeah.
So you might have to get
Hey,
used to it.
everyone's got a personality, man.
Yeah. But I mean, what you were saying about, this future, right? Maybe one thing I'll add too is that I'm seeing is physical events. I think physical
Mhm.
events are so awesome. Um, a lot of us, yeah, I was a nerdy kid. I was actually in crypto pretty early, but I had, a very small position.
Mhm.
When I was, I believe, 14. What was that? That was like 2013. My dad bought me a Bitcoin for
Mhm.
my birthday, and I held it that whole time. And I was just like at boarding school. I was a kid that didn't go out a lot. I stayed in my room, kind of just like on my computer, meeting friends. Um,
Mhm.
extreme Reddit karma, like beyond embarrassed to share it. Things like that. I was like a real like internet kid. And what's cool about this is that as we see more physical events happening for NFTs, meetups, art shows, like rocket launches, like with Tom Sachs' Rocket Factory and Governor's Island here in New York the other day. Actually, I lied. I'm in France. I just usually I just say
Here,
New York.
there.
I'm a liar. I'm a straight liar. When we see these physical events, it's like building community and building that social infrastructure doesn't have to be like, there's like a screen that separates us. Like it would be feasible for us to meet. And what I love is that even as a kind of shy dude, it's been so easy to meet NFT people because when you
Mhm.
meet them, you kind of know what their values are. You kind of know they're passionate about community. You got to be real in this space. You got to be authentic. Like it's so easy for me to meet people. Like,
Non-negotiable.
that's almost like a little like secret for me. It's like I get a little shy. Like I get nervous when I have to talk to somebody new. But honestly, if I know you're in NFTs, like like we're getting drinks immediately. So
Yeah, you
that's a
speak the
great.
same. You speak the same language as somebody else. You feel comfortable. I mean, I was the same way. I was really anxious about doing this channel, right? 4 years ago, I was not sure I really wanted to do that because I hadn't put myself out there. But I think this space has given that to me in a sense that I always cared about this space. I always was learning about it. I had a lot of knowledge I wanted to share. And this just gave me a voice both here and elsewhere. So I think that's really cool. And hopefully that also inspires other people. If you have an idea and you want to create something, like create something. If you want to reach out to me, reach out to Andrew, like talk about something, do that. Like that's the ethos of the space.
Yeah. And hey, just a personal thing. Really like your videos because you're so good at explaining heavy
Thanks.
topics in a really concise way, or maybe saying like this topic isn't so heavy and we can talk about it this way. Something we got to do better in the NFT space is explaining how it works to people, not only as a gesture of goodwill, but as a serious thing.
Mhm.
taking on a lot of difficult topics like what does it mean to like really own something? Are there actually environmental issues, or like what are things coming to improve that, such as proof of stake, things like that. There's serious questions that we have to tackle head on. I think that's what excites me too and makes this cool as a journalist.
Mhm.
My biggest worry was just like coming in and just gushing about every project and writing PR for them because
Mhm.
that's a fluff piece and that's not fun. I want to talk about, you know, the 12-year-old guy who made the 12-year-old kid who made weird whales who might not have been 12 years old. And what does that mean about anonymity, right? Or what does it mean to, form a group to try and bid $2 million for a one of one ghost NFT when none of us could afford that on our own? Things like that. Or we have so many scams in the NFT space right now, but what does it mean to avoid scams or get scammed? But what does it also mean to come together as a community to think of ways to come back, to keep creating in the NFT space, to keep, you know, like finding value in things, even when the worst thing in your life just happened. So I'm rambling, but I love how you condense things, and that's something that I'm working
Thanks.
on as well.
Thanks, man. Hey, well, if we ever have a chance to collaborate on something, let's do it. I think we could be a super team. But folks, if you're watching this and you have questions about NFTs, please leave them in the comments down below. I will have Andrew help me to the best of my abilities. If answer questions that are targeted at him. But we'll definitely try and answer some questions. So leave them in the comments. Please again follow Andrew on Twitter. That will be in the description. And also, I hope you have a fantastic day, have a fantastic weekend, and that you are wildly successful in the world of NFTs. But most importantly, thank you, Andrew, for joining me on the channel and sharing your thoughts. It was really awesome talking to you.
Hey, it was my pleasure, and no matter what, we're gonna make it.
We're going to make it. That's as good as a way to end it as anything ever. All right, folks, until next time, cheers.